Welcome, everyone. Good morning, noon, or evening, depending on where you are joining us from. I am Dr. Bushra Anjum, and I am the host for ACMW Celebrating Technology Leaders series. So the series is designed to demystify various career options in tech. In each episode, we invite women leaders who are successfully architecting their careers within a tech field, and then we try to learn from their experience. Today, we are focusing on careers in data, and we have a wonderful panel arranged for you. I will be facilitating the discussion for the first 45 minutes, and the final 15 minutes are for you to ask any questions to our panelists. Feel free to write in and send your questions through the by tapping them into the Q&A widget that you will see in the bottom, and then clicking submit. Also, on the bottom panel, you will find a number of other widgets, including Twitter and sharing apps. So we encourage you to share any nuggets that you find useful, as I'm sure others in your network will find that too. Thank you for spending the next hour here with us. We will make every effort to make it worth your while. All right, let's begin. So today we have three wonderful women joining us for our discussion. We have Samia Khalid, who has a master's degree in software engineering and is currently a senior applied scientist at Microsoft. We have Layne. She has an MSc in business intelligence and analytics and is currently a lead data and analytics manager at Eurostar in UK. And we have Lilla Czako. She has a BSc in physics and currently a data engineer at a San Francisco-based startup, Doximity. So from physics to Python. Now that is a story I know many of our listeners here will be keen on listening to. All right, so let's know more about our panelists, starting with Lilla. Tell us about your unique personal background and how did you come where you are today?
All right, hello. So my name is Lilla, and I currently work as a data engineer, but I actually tried out other roles in data profession. So I started as a data analyst, and then I was a little bit a data scientist for a little while. But yes, I have a physics degree, and for a little time, I thought that I want to be a physicist, but then I started to study evolutionary game theory, and I was writing simulations for public good games. I studied the coexistence of cooperative versus selfish behaviors in a population. And well, I was really fresh, and I really thought before that selfishness and cooperativeness is more like a personality question or moral question. So for me, studying this from the perspective of statistical physics and realizing that this is all predictable, it was a really interesting turning point, and I realized that I'm more interested about observing human behavior than physics itself. And like, who has more data about that than, well, data science? Also, it was really tempting for me that I don't really have to pick an industry because all the industries have data, so I can choose whatever I want. And so I started as a data analyst. I was really lucky because my physics education gave me the foundation of mathematics, which was needed, basics of programming, and some database knowledge.
Yeah, cool. Thank you for sharing that. And we'll come back to this question also. I know a lot of our listeners are really interested in finding out how to break into the field, and we'll cover that in detail. But before that, Liza, how about your background?
Okay, thanks, Bushra. Yeah, so I started off at 10 programming. So we've got a home computer. I used to tinker with electronics and stuff like that because my dad was an electrician. And from 10, I knew I wanted to work in IT, but I didn't know which area. And when I got to university, I actually decided that I wanted to kind of combine the sciences. So I actually did start doing physical chemistry and physical sciences and chemistry degree with computing. But then I decided I didn't like it. I didn't want to be a forensic scientist or something like that, because you had to program with Fortran, and I thought, I don't like Fortran. So I then went on to do the computing degree, and that led me into, I would say I started off as a software engineer, so I used to code a lot, so programming multiple languages, and in my past life I programmed in Java. Having worked with, the coding aspects and stuff like that, I was really interested in the databases. And at that time, there was a lot of legacy, I would say, business intelligence tools around. And I was first introduced to SAP Business Objects. And that is when I was like, okay, I like this side of the IT, because there's the creative side, because you create the insights, you produce the dashboards and so forth, but at the same time, there's still an element of where you've got to pull the data in. So this area, I would say for me, has been kind of a more rewarding area, in the sense that I feel that it's given me the scope to still have some technical understanding, but then you get more focus in the business side. And as time has gone on, when I moved into more of the business intelligence side, which the name keeps changing over the years, so now it's data analytics, but the skill sets haven't changed. So it's very much that using what I had from doing coding and so forth, I was able to take back, but then further enhance my knowledge of, I would say, databases, the different types. So it's led me into the role that I do now. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. And we'll ask more questions on the management route also. Liza and I have very similar journeys. I was also a Java programmer in my previous life, working for Amazon, and I'm also in the analytics management side. So it's really interesting to hear a perspective from another continent coming in and joining us. Samia, how about your journey?
Hey. Yeah, so first of all, thank you for having me. And I'll start with the usual question. Can you actually see me? Because I see my screen frozen, so I'm not sure if you can still see me fine.
I also see it frozen.
Yeah.
All right. If you want to quickly log off and log back in, that's fine.
Yeah, or I can just continue. I'll try to log off after. The meanwhile, I can talk about my background. So I just started, as you mentioned, doing a master's in software engineering, and with a huge focus on distributed systems, how to create systems at scale that are large systems, low latencies, and all the goodness that comes with it. And then when I was deciding what to work on for my master thesis, this data world seemed so fascinating. And one of the thesis projects was from Scania, which is a trucking industry, and where they were looking on how they can use data for predictive maintenance, because that helps in saving, because if they have trucks out on the roads and they break, then it's a huge loss, and the things that they're carrying, they get all, it's a huge mess that they need to fix, and there's a loss there. Or if they send them for maintenance too early, that's not good as well, because that requires a lot of money as well. So it was a very interesting problem. I was like, okay, can we really solve it with data? So that appealed me, and I was like, okay, let's try it out. And that's what got me into the data science space. And when I started, and I just fell in love with it. It was so fascinating that given data from pressure and temperature and whatnot, you can now all of a sudden understand do the lifetime analysis of the components in a vehicle. And that's the kind of thing that's used for planes and so on and forth. So that's what got me really hooked to the data science part. And it actually ended up going well. I started with no expectations, and when it ended up with a patent, I was like, okay, wow, that was unexpected in a nice way. And after that, I got, after finishing my master's, got hired at Microsoft, and I started my journey as a software engineer. And while I was working, so I had this background of distributed systems and this thesis work in data science. As I worked, I realized that I find it really fascinating, besides building the cool software and the systems at scale, to really work on products that in infusing smartness into the product. So you have the two spectrums, right? On the, let's say the left, you have these systems at scale, and the right, it's just the science on data. So I like to be in between, where you're using that science and infusing smartness into the product. So that's why I then went from the software engineering to more towards the applied sciences roles and work on teams that are working on infusing smartness and helping people be more productive via the intelligence insights. And yeah, so it's both a combination of science work and engineering. So now I've been married to the two to find my sweet spot.
Very cool. And I love the phrase infusing smartness. I think that's a good way to put what data scientists and data professionals do in general. So I was looking at the questions that were submitted as people were registering for this session, and a lot of them were really interested in finding out that how do you break into the field of data science? And that question was coming from a lot of different backgrounds, those who have a CS background, those who don't have a CS background, those who might have gone to a boot camp, or those who might have considering going for a master's degree in analytics or information sciences or management. So I know it's a very wide question, but whatever guidance you would like to provide on how can one break into the field of data science. Let's start from Liza.
Okay, yeah, so it is a wide area, but there are, I would say that there's some key things that you need to have. First, you need a coding language. I think that's a must. The most popular, and if you've never coded, and the easiest one to learn is Python. Good SQL skills, being able to query both transactional databases and also, I would say, dimensional fact models, understanding those core concepts, having the ability to gather requirements, understanding also following an agile approach and Kanban or Scrum as such. And the key thing I would suggest is, if you're new to this field, look at the open source projects, because a lot of the tools now are very much open platform, so there's availability for you to learn there. If you do a project, say in GitHub, it becomes visible, and write about what you're doing, and speak to other people. Those are, I would say, the key things I would suggest that you look at.
Lilla, would you like to continue? Lilla, we can't hear you. Okay. Let's try that as Lilla figures out the setting. Samia, would you like to continue?
Yeah, sorry, I had missed in the beginning, so I had to drop off. So I am assuming the question was how to break into the field, right? Was that the question?
Break into the data field, yes. Even if you have a CS or a non-CS background.
So first of all, I'd like to start a bit differently for jumping into answering. I would like to say that, first of all, before you take that step, try to understand why do you want to break into the field? Why do you want to do data science? Please don't do it for the hype of it, just because it's the cool thing. So try to understand what is that appeals you. Why would you want to be in this field? Is it the problems that you can solve with the data? So understand that. First, like why you want to do it, for example, and then it's a huge space, right? So data is everywhere. Which kind of space would you like to work in? Is it the finance industry? Is it in the medical domain? Or is it with the big tech companies producing software? So really try to understand that, because that is what will eventually set you up for success. So once you have that clear, and I'm assuming you are in the beginning, let's say you're a student or still at the starting. Once you have that figured out, I would say the next step would be how to get your foot in the door, right? So that's the thing. So there are a couple of ways you can networking, now we are connected. So reaching out to people who are working, once you have identified the industry or the companies that you want to work at, try to network, reach them out on LinkedIn, for example. Like cold messaging is great. But when doing cold messaging, let's say on LinkedIn, you're reaching out to someone, let's say, please be mindful of a couple of things. First of all, why you're reaching out to that particular person. So that's really important. What is that you value about their work and you really appreciate? And please be honest. So honestly, like what, and not just for the sake of faking things, oh, I love your work, and you have no idea what they do, but honest appreciation, and then tell them why you would want to be part of the company or do what they do, and what is your value proposition, what you would be bringing to the table. You're a learner and you love the field, and what is really about you. Make yourself stand out. Just don't send, hi, how are you kind of messages on LinkedIn. Please don't do that. And then other events, try to network, like companies have these like university events or other networking events, try to be there. So being able to land an internship is a great way to get your foot in the door. At the beginning, it might not be the one that you want, but at least it will add some resume. You'll have like, something on your resume that will help you to land more, move towards your goal. And it doesn't have to, if say you want to start, be at Google, Microsoft, or Facebook, it doesn't have to be an internship that's there. You can start small, go for startups or other, wherever you can, to build that experience. And that experience you can then leverage towards your bigger goals or where you want to achieve, and you keep trying out. So that's kind of my advice on how to break.
That's great. And I love the fact how you highlighted going ahead in small steps, internships, and getting your foot into the door. Lilla, let's see how the mic is working. Oh, cool. We can hear you.
Fantastic. Okay, so I 100% agree with Samia and Liza. I only want to add a few more things that I see a lot of people in data science who don't have data science degrees or computer science degrees, but they have some kind of scientific degrees. So why I think that's very helpful because of the mathematical foundation and background. And how I see it, since programming is like really a lot of times when you optimize something, you use these mathematical techniques you learned. And also in data science, you really have to understand the underlying mathematical foundation. And also in data analysis, of course, like statistics is a key. What I see is, so scientific degrees usually get that. And people who go to boot camps, I want to talk to you right now, because what I see is boot camps are usually very focused on these topics like data science, data analytics, but sometimes they are not very much focusing on these details. And I would recommend highly to just listen to you. Like, there's so many very valuable courses up on YouTube where you can learn mathematics like linear algebra, graph theory, set theory. This is going to be like, it's going to make you very powerful, and you will have like so many different perspectives. How can you solve a problem? And I've seen that to be very efficient also in job and interviews.
Thank you for giving a shout out to all the other learning resources out there. YouTube's, Coursera's, edX, Udacity's, there's a Data Camp, I think. So yeah, tons of good resources out there. And not all of them cost money. A lot of them is free, or financial aid is available. Fantastic. So I think the logical next question would be, what are some of the most in-demand data careers that are out there? And I understand that titles could be confusing because everyone defines data scientist or data analyst or business analyst in their own ways. So how about we focus more on the like skill-based areas? What are some of the most in-demand areas in data that are out there? Let's start with Liza.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so so the role, sometimes the job titles don't actually match what you're looking for, and I think we've all covered it. So in terms of schools, definitely what we've all said, I think is key. So definitely, if you want to work in being more involved in analysing the data in depth, you do need good statistical modelling understanding. You need to also have the ability to write code. I think that's a must, a complete must. There's also areas around traditional, I would say, database, data warehouse modelling concepts, such as using Kimball and Inman, and understanding about ETL and ELT. There's loads of tools out there now. Again, I do mention, I say there are a lot of open source tools which will give you that foundation. The visualization aspects, whereas before the roles were really defined that if you did one area, you would stick with that one area. If you were pulling the data in, you would just do that. Whereas now there's an expectation that you've got an understanding that you might specialize in, you know, say if you're the person that's pulling the data and cleaning it up, such as maybe as a data engineer, but a data engineer also needs the ability to visualize it for operational reports to show that the data is correct. So definitely look at what's in terms of, like, you know, the different sources out there. I mean, a good source for any area that sits within the data analytics is it Kaggle, isn't it? Yeah. It's a good source, and you can get data sources there. They have competitions. There's a lot of sources out there to touch up on your coding, such as Coding Bat. I think that's one of them. There's Leak Code. So pick an area that you're interested in, and even though if you see a role out there, it doesn't mean that you have to tick all the boxes, but it's really key that, you know, as was said, that you're going into this field for the right reason, because even if you understand it and you don't really want, you know, you have to have the passion to work with data. So just learning how to code is not going to help you, to be honest with you. So it's making sure that you understand the field and the direction you want to get into, and look at what's out there, because a lot of the tools are free to use. Yes, there's proprietary tools, but you don't have to gain access to those. You can use R. Having said that, even if you're using R, I would advise that you do know how to code, because sometimes the functions in there could actually be wrong. So that's one of the key things, and that's why a lot of people tend to go towards Python and Scala. I'm going to let somebody else continue on with that.
Yeah, Samia, Lilla, if you would like to add to that.
Yeah, I can take that. So when talking about the most in-demand data careers, in general, all the data careers, given the sheer amount of data, they're all in very high demand. So I would like to break it into 3 buckets when we're saying the most in-demand. Right? First is that you have these companies that have huge amounts of data, and they're interested in analyzing the data so that they can derive business insights. So that's the one category of data jobs. So for business insights. And the second category, or business insights, or even for other kinds of, even for science purposes, right? So it's data and you want to derive insights. And the second category would be products creation, software, smart products, whether it's with natural language understanding or computer vision infused into it, or other kind of, like, whatever intelligence that's infused into those products. So we see them all around us, right? Feeds, or even now all the backgrounds that are changed in Zoom and Teams and so on. So they have all the AI aspect into it. So that's where the data part comes into it. So the second is the products. And the third bucket, a big bucket, I would say, is if you are really interested into research, right? You are the person who loves research and you the more academic person. Then there's a cutting edge research. So that's the other third bucket. And they're all highly in demand, depending on if you feel that you're more of a business person, or you are more of a coding and a product person, or you're an academia person, you can find your path in these three roles. And of course, then within each of the buckets, for example, in the analysis bucket, you have data analysts, you have data scientists, and then within the product, you have from machine learning engineers to applied scientists and so on and forth, and then you have researchers. And now the exact roles, as you very rightly mentioned, the boundaries are blurry. That depends, since these are new roles coming up, it's a new industry. And it depends on the maturity of the industry. If it's a startup, they'll want to have one unicorn who can do everything, right? If it's a huge company, they'll have many people for all these tasks. So the exact titles will vary, or the requirements will vary. But being able to identify the big category of data that you want to go into, I'd say that's the in demand categorization.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Liza, let me follow up with another question. So you are in the management position. So have you found that being a data manager is somehow different from an engineering manager or a product manager, or have you found the roles to be mostly similar?
I would say with an engineer, right, so the roles can be slightly similar with an engineering manager, because I think as time's gone on, I started off as a BI manager, and then I moved into, data analytics manager, and essentially it's the same. The difference I think I've seen now is that it focuses more on that you would have individuals that are along the path of the data scientists, that they can actually do the machine learning. With the engineering manager, it tends to be associated more with the DevOps side, whereas the key skills of being a manager are the same regardless. Understanding about budgets, coaching, supporting your team, doing the staffing, as in hiring, restructuring. The product manager, I would say, it's a different set as such, in that they're very much focused on the delivery of the product, that they take ownership. Having said that, what I've noticed in the last maybe 3 to 5 years, they're starting to merge into one role. I'm sure you would have seen that yourself, in that the expectation is that whereas before data was seen as something, well, we need it, but we're not going to heavily focus on it. But data, it's a product that you're delivering, regardless of whether it's internally for internal customers or externally. So there are definitely aspects of it that you do that incorporates either of those roles now. So even sometimes you may see an engineering manager, it's actually an engineering manager that is dealing with the data, an engineering manager that's actually managing the product rollout. So they are very similar, and the roles, again, it depends on what the job title is. Sometimes you may get engineering manager, and you're actually part of your responsibility is ensuring that you deliver the product for the business intelligence, or it may be delivering the data platform, which again is a product. So the key things that you pick up, I think the key thing to remember, that your manager and your leadership, so you're there to inspire the people that are part of your team, that everyone's working to an end goal.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, and I could not agree more. So I see already a few questions are coming up. People, please feel free to submit your questions, and we'll get back to them towards the end of the session. Samia, go ahead.
I would just like to add great points by Liza. I just wanted to add one point, is that the difference manager versus individual person. You have to understand, for you, like as an individual contributor, your success is the work you deliver, right? But when you're a manager, your success is the success of your team. So it's everyone, you are making everyone move in the right direction. So the definition of success changes. So are you the person who likes to work with people, having great communication skills, and understanding that your success is the success of other people. So at least having that mindset. So if you see yourself as that person, then I'd say the manager role is more suitable. If you are just sole focus is your individual contributions, then that's more like sticking to the IC path is a better approach. And of course, as you mentioned earlier, that having the leadership skills.
I remember one of my mentors when I was working at Amazon said to me that the role of the manager is that if things go right, give all the credit to your team. And if things go wrong, take all the blame yourself. So I was like, okay. He said, I want to make sure you know what you're getting into. I said, yeah, I can do it. Lilla, how does your day-to-day look like? And what are some of the tools that you use in your everyday job?
Well, my day-to-day look like a lot like software engineers, but it's also very different. Of course, I need to take care of testing. Well, just to say a little bit about like data engineering, how this looks and how this differs from data analysis and data science is that if you think about data analysis, you can think about they are just like private investigators for the company. They are the ones who dig deep and understand like where should we go, what the users feel, etc. Data scientists are responsible for the reflexes of the company. So all of these automated reactions which we give for events is all of the data scientists as far as I can see that. And the data engineer is basically the person who takes care of the logistics around this. So what I mean by this is like we transport and transform data, but it's more complex than that. It's like we have multiple tools, we have multiple requests coming in, data analysts, data scientists are relying on us, and we have to deliver in time in a way which is production ready and acceptable. So how I see that, like, well, the tools I use is, of course, I'm programming. I'm programming in Python, but I actually did some Scala before. I need to use databases, SQL language, etc. I also need to be aware of CI/CD and unit testing. I also need to be aware, which is kind of like weird, that sometimes when I get a request, the person who submits this request, they usually have already an idea of like what is the ideal way of the design, and usually this is what they tell me, but I have to be aware that usually the customers of mine, they are not necessarily are aware of all the universe of tools we can use and how can we better deliver for them. So it's really like a dance. It's really, I think logistics is really something I could compare it to. So of course my job requires a lot of programming, but also a lot of design work around that and understanding of these tools I'm using and the customers and the overall company goals.
That was beautifully said. I love the way you said it's kind of like a dance to figure out what the customers want and what's the best tools that you can offer them. Absolutely. Samia, how does your day-to-day look like, and what are some of the tools that you use?
Yeah, so my day-to-day looks like lots of meetings. Yeah. So especially now that I'm in a tech lead role, so it involves a lot of meetings. But in general, yeah, and so the day-to-day when you're working as science, it would vary a lot when you're in a smaller company versus companies at the scale of Microsoft, because we have to deal with, when it comes to the science work, a lot with compliance and all the data privacy issues. So when to get something done, you have to get a lot of approvals and do privacy reviews and a lot of these things, even for making a small change. So it's not like there's just the data and you can do whatever you want. So that's a major differentiator when working in a startup culture versus big tech. And all the data, interestingly, so the experiment, so as an applied scientist, it involves all from data engineering, modeling, deployment, and then to do the analysis of all of it, along with the meetings part. And now the data, it's all eyes off experimentation. It means that it's black box. So we have these experimental platforms that are based on mainly based on Python. So you can use PyTorch and sometimes TensorFlow as well. But the main thing is that you cannot see any of the data. So you make assumptions and you just write code and think it's running there. And then you have the other challenge is, okay, you have done it and then have design reviews and everything to make sure things are running fast as well, they're reliable. So yeah, lots of meetings, design discussions, and some experimentation. And it's internal tools, so most of the tools are internal for Microsoft proprietary, so I wouldn't take names.
Sure. That's understandable. And you mentioned meetings. No one does more meetings than managers. So, Lisa, how does your day-to-day look like, or any tools that you use?
Okay, so my day-to-day, well, when it was outside of COVID, was, you have a lot of meetings. And one of the things I learned earlier on is that you just block out your time. So you put busy or, free. So, when you move from being an individual contributor to a manager, I think one of the key differences is that you have to manage expectations of everybody that's in your team. So you are the person that, when it's going good, you're correct. You take the praise. When it's going bad, you're the one that has to go and say why and mitigate, I would say. So sometimes a lot of your time is mitigation, having meetings. I think one of the tools you use all the time is your email assistant, be it Outlook or Gmail. Yes, still occasionally I may query a database, regardless of being, because I am a technical manager, so if there's things that need to be helped along, I will help out as necessary. Again, we use, there's a variety of different tools, and these are various tools out there. Power BI, Tableau, there's business objects, a bit of Python, SQL databases, a variety of the different databases, but it's more of a strategic overview of managing expectations. And I think that's one of the key things you learn as a manager, and ensuring that your team have what they need and being there to kind of take the fall of such, in that if you set the expectations so that people don't come and say, I want this done tomorrow, and it's not realistic. You have to have very good negotiation skills, I think. So it's more around soft skills, I would say. That's in my toolkit as such, but you still have the proprietary tools that you may use to assist as necessary. You go into a different mindset. I would definitely agree with that.
Oh, thank you. And talking about day-to-days, let's move on to another question, which is that, so we as data professionals kind of have a unique opportunity to have a lens on the world or the goings that probably many other people do not, because we have all the data and we dig into it for insights. Would you like to share a story where you got amazed or surprised by some of your findings? Let's start with Lilla.
Sure. So we talk about the bubble all the time nowadays. And this is so interesting because as a data professional, you can kind of look out from this bubble. So what's the bubble, right? You usually get friends with like-minded people, and your peers and your the people around you. They are usually have a similar idea of things and a similar vision. And so since we have the social media, we kind of see that more, and this produces this positive feedback that everyone thinks what I think, so I am the norm. And this is, of course, not true. So this is the bubble. But as a data professional, you have the opportunity to just look out from this and just see that as a whole. And also this comes with responsibility. And the story I have in mind is that I worked in this company where we analyzed social media and the overlaps between in followers, the Facebook fan pages and open groups. And once there was this big demonstration in Hungary, and it was totally organized 100% on Facebook. And the people were really proud because they finally felt empowered. But this rumor came that actually it was backed up by one of the political parties, and actually it was like funded by someone. So it was really discouraging. And the company where I worked, we did some pro bono analysis, and we sent it to newspapers. And we made this analysis, and it turned out that this rumor was really just a rumor. It was not true. And so we posted this article, and people started to respond, and the whole thing just blew up, really, because it seemed like people also, again, felt empowered. And we were really shocked at how much impact we could have, like just showing just this little simple visualization. Also, it was interesting because a lot of people were bothered by, like, how did we get this information? And I kind of like the other takeaway for me that like how little people knew and know still about the digital footprint they leave behind when they interact on these open pages. But just overall, as an overall summary, is this panoramic view. What you get working in data is really opening up for you a different world and an understanding of our human population and community.
A different understanding, for sure. Samia or Liza, would you like to add to that?
So I can actually build up on what you were talking about social media. So I have worked on creating feed that was internal for Microsoft product. So worked on really creating feeds. So I have that science, like the understanding of what goes in the creation. So worked on it as a scientist and engineer. And now as a user, when I use social media and the feeds, and you see things that pop up, you realize, well, like the work, when we're doing it, you don't realize the impact that it would have, those features you are adding or those things. Like as a person working on the product, you don't realize the implications. So as a user now, I see, okay, if I'm searching something and then Instagram or so on, they start feeding me that kind of content, and it either moves me to buy that content or impact, like with the ideas that you keep on seeing those things. You're able to understand the power that comes with actually having that data and being able to work on it and what you are creating. Like all the people working in the social media companies, right? So maybe there's a disconnect. You don't realize the power that you have that comes with it. So it's, connecting those dots that when working on the feed, as, we're just adding features here and there. It's nothing much. Then you go deeper and try to understand the social media behavior. It's like, wow, that's small. The impact data can have a huge impact. And that's why I think awareness for people working in this field of the ethical consideration and the work, the impact that it can have, that understanding for the scientists or any other roles in the data careers, I think it's really, really important.
Yeah. And I would say it has come to the forefront, especially in the U.S., given what has happened in the last couple of weeks with the presidential transition and everything else that came with that. So social media has a huge role to play in how we organize, how we distribute information, as Lilla said, whether we want to remain in our little bubbles or whether we want to get out of them and get more information, figure out the digital footprints. Thank you. I'm glad you guys touched on it. Guys and gals, I have recently been told that guys is less gender neutral than people think. So guys and gals. So from stories to myths, tell us about a myth in your field that you find really irritating, and what would you say to dispel it? Let's start with Liza.
A myth. What? A myth. Gosh. I think. Right. So, as a manager, right, for me, I think one of the things that I always get asked, people think that you can't code as a manager. I don't know why. I think because I will have to. Because like I've had to say that I'm a technical manager, and when I say that, it's like, no, I don't code as I would have done maybe 10 years ago, but I can code. And I think, it's difficult to kind of put your finger on, because there's so many different things. I think people's expectation of what it means to, say, deliver data products as such, in that they think it's going to be the all singing, answer to solve all your problems. And I don't know, because it's a very difficult. I'll be honest with you, it's a difficult question for me to answer. Other than the fact that I've worked on products and projects before, and there's always been elements of where there's parts of it has failed. I don't think anyone's ever had a completely successful product or delivery. You'd have to be perfect, and no solution ever is. There's always an expectation by what people think they want versus what they actually get delivered. That's definitely a big myth, in that people, sometimes you get you define a roadmap, and it's kind of like, okay, we defined a roadmap and this is what you're going to get. And one of the things I've always said is that be realistic and honest about what you're delivering. I don't want to go I don't want to go too much, because there's different elements of it depending on your role and so forth. Maybe I'll think of something a bit better later on.
That was a good answer. That was a good answer. I like it to be more honest in what you are delivering. Yes. Samia, Lilla, go ahead.
I wouldn't say really something that irritates me. I try not to get irritated. And it's like, you remind to say it's not about irritation, but a myth, I would say in general, is that so I'm in the AI space, and what I get to hear a lot often is that people have this idea that AI is the movies, right? So there are those killer robots that are coming to take over the world, or that AGI, this artificial general intelligence, is coming soon. So all the jobs will be replaced, and we'll have this AI will take over the world. So it's not going to happen anytime soon, and it's more going to be AI and humans, how we can work together, right? Because at the end of the day, humans have invented technology. So there was, when even the fire was first, it came with fire, right? You can burn houses with the fire. You can do lots of great things and have your meal cooked. So it's how we decide to use it. Of course, there will always be some elements that make use of it negatively, but I guess that applies to pretty much everything. So as long as it's the optimistic towards the overall goal that it's going to have more positive impact than negative. And it's not going to replace all of us. At least we'll have some jobs will get automated, but it means that more jobs of a different kind will get created. So more towards creativity, we'll have time to be more creative. For example, like 10 years ago, things like social media influencer or all these kind of jobs didn't exist, right? So it's new things coming up. So even if AI is going to replace jobs, there will be new ones coming up. And the general AI is still not there. It's a problem.
Lilla,
yeah. So I'm not sure if it's a myth or how should I put this, but I kind of see that data engineering as a role seems to be not exciting or not creative for some. And I'd like to dispel that. But it's really hard to dispel without like just saying an example from the work I do. I could come up with an example which would be only understandable for data engineers who work in this, like what are the challenges. So let me tell you a story which is an analogy to this. So think about this. You are a king in an empire. And in this empire, there's a cave. And in the cave, there's a dragon lives, which is a really dangerous dragon. It's a risk to your people. You have to do something about it. So what can you do? Like you can hire heroes, and these heroes have different skill set and limitations and different price. And well, of course, you can't hire hundreds because the cave is very narrow. And just to make it even harder for you, you send your heroes in, they kill the dragon, but it turns out a new one emerges every day. Woohoo! So this is basically the work of a data engineer. And as a king, you can decide to hire heroes, or you can learn more about the problem and invest time into research, but the dragon will start to kill your people. But maybe you find out that if it's going to die if you just knock out one of its magic fangs, so you just send in a child with a slingshot, or you just block the cave entrance. I know it's a very silly example, but really it's what we are doing. Like we have this like challenging tasks and a small time to solve it. And we have so many tools we can choose from. And there are some free ones, there are some expensive ones, but none of them the perfect tool. So we always have to puzzle together the solutions from these moving blob-like puzzle items. And there's not just one good solution, there's many. And compared to what is expected from you, you have to come up with the best optimum. So it can be really challenging and creative at the end. With this
Creativity is at the core of it. This is such a cool example and analogy, Lilla. I'm going to use that when I go and mentor other people about the dragon in the cage. I think that was very well put together. All right, so I would really want to make sure that we get a few questions from the audience. Really happy about today is that looking at the registration list, I know that we have some high schoolers who have joined in for the session, so 17 and below. So there's one question that, what were your high school years like? And if you go back to the high school, is there anything you would do differently? Anyone who would like to take that?
Okay, I'll answer that. But I went to a girls' school. I went to an all-girls school, and it's interesting that as I've met women that are in the leadership tracks and stuff like that, because I'm an older generation, they went to single-sex schools where you weren't fighting with the boys to learn computing. So we did have computers at school, and I think I definitely would have focused more on the statistical stuff when I was at school. Having said that, I did a master's in business intelligence and analytics, and you had to revisit your statistical learning from school age. I think I definitely would have paid a lot more attention, should I say. For me, I did sciences, so I always knew that I wanted to work in like a STEM area. Now, things have moved on, so it's a lot more easier, I think, definitely for school-age children, that they've got resources out there that are available to learn to code and do something that you're interested in. Because if you find a project that you want to do, it will make you learn that skill. And at the same time, it should be enjoyable, because how I learned to code was we had a home computer, and I learned to code in BASIC. I'm sure a lot of these kids don't know what BASIC is nowadays. But I did it because I wanted to beat my sister playing the skiing game, so I put cheats in it so I could beat her. But it meant it taught me how to code. And obviously, you know, as I've told the story now, she now knows that I did that. But at the time, she didn't. Just like, how can you beat me? But what's illustrating is if you find something that you're passionate about, that you want to code about, then it's something that you can use as a basis to say, actually, do I enjoy this or I don't? You may enjoy it as a pastime. It may not necessarily be area you want to focus on. But I think one of the key skills now, definitely as we're in the digital world, is understanding how, you know, coding works. Because, and especially data, everybody uses data in whatever role they do.
That was cool. I love the little part of like the cheating part. That was very cool. Go ahead.
One thing on top of that, since it's high school and it's the phase where we're learning a lot of things, right? Studying different things. So I would just like to say that when you're learning, try to be curious, have the curiosity mindset. Don't do it. Yeah, grades might be really important for you at that stage to end up in the university that you want, but still don't try to do it. I need to learn this so that I can get an A grade. Yeah, that will come automatically if you focus on trying to understand, really try to understand the things, because then it will stick with you for a longer time, even after the exam. So let's say you're learning how does this thing work. So instead of saying, oh gosh, I need to learn how this works, or how to code or write this thing so that I can then replicate it in my exam, rather than having that mindset, try to see, oh wow, how does this work? This is so cool. I'm going to even what's the inside, what goes in it. Right? Be curious and have that continuous learning mindset. I think it will, and not just for high school, even after that. So instead of just chasing those grades, try to be a learner, stay curious.
Yes. Thank you for sharing that.
Well, I went to a high school which was specialized to performing arts, so I didn't really know like how did I ended up at learning physics. But I think I actually really enjoyed that, so I would not replace it with anything else. No matter that I decided at the end that I'm going to go towards something which is more like scientific. What I would do differently is just, I'm really jealous about the kids nowadays, because there's so many materials is available for you to support your education. Because how I learned, it was purely from books, maybe like some lab work at the school, but my school was not really well equipped. And nowadays you can order so many like little toys and like experimentation kits. You can go and learn a little bit of programming, learn how to simulate these experiments or whatever are you interested about. So there's so many tools. Just don't get tired of searching for more. And so many of them are free. So many of them are for an affordable price. Don't miss out these opportunities.
Oh, thank you. And I just received a note that says that at the University of Washington, Bothell, they have organized a watch party for this event, and they are launching their ACMW chapter right now. So congratulations. And feel free to reach out to us anytime, and we'll be happy to support the university and your ACMW chapter as much as we can. Let me take one more question. I have a couple of more minutes. This one, not necessarily related to data, but it's being a female in a male-dominated STEM field. Have you ever felt a pressure to overperform in order to be taken seriously, and how did you deal with that?
I think this requires more than a couple of minutes to answer.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, definitely. I think we've all experienced that. Because you always suffer from imposter syndrome, regardless where level you're at. I don't think I've ever worked in any role where I haven't been questioned about whether I can do the technical stuff. definitely you do sometimes feel that you have to prove that you can do things, and because it's still very male dominated, regardless of what you see from, like, especially with the big companies, you know, they all have women's networks. They all have, you know, the different diversity groups and so forth. But if you're, you know, anyone starting into this field, you will have barriers. But I will say, do not let that stop you. If you've got good people around you to coach and mentor and support you, that's one of the key things. It's a difficult, it's something that I think we can all agree that we've had to face, regardless of. I remember I was told once, I looked at your CV and I can't believe that you've had all that experience. I was like, why was that? And it's like, they couldn't answer it. But there's kind of like a conception that, especially when once you go down to the leadership track, you sometimes do get questioned whether you've got the technical skills to back up your soft skills, and vice versa. And it's very much a case of aligning yourself with a good manager. I'm sure we've all had awful managers and good managers, but having the peer mentoring as well, having people that can say, you know, you've done a good job, but it's something that you will face regardless.
Let me get back to Samia and Lilla. Just a note for our audience, you would see on the screen a link to a feedback form, and it will only take 2 minutes, I know, because I designed it, and it will help us guide to get the right careers in front of you and have the right panelists and the right discussion topics. So please, please, please do fill out that feedback form as we ask our remaining 2 speakers on their thoughts on this question. All right, go ahead, Samia or Lilla.
I'll just say that even if you're the only female, as Liza said, don't let that stop you. Think of yourself as, I'll be the trailblazer that then will inspire and motivate more women to come forward. So take that with pride. And also, yes, imposter syndrome is real. So which means imposter syndrome, since we have many high schoolers and might not have heard of these terms, is that once you achieve great things, you feel like, oh, that was just by chance. It was luck. I managed to get this job or to get this thing done. I didn't really deserve it. Somehow I managed my way to it, and one day I'll be found out soon. They'll discover that I'm a fraud. So basically that's imposter syndrome, and that's so surreal. I've had it. Not gonna, since we are most of the time, like, yeah, that's, so know that you will have those feelings. You will face those barriers, and that imposter syndrome that really then motivates you. You have to do more, because last time was luck. So before they find you out, you have to now do more, achieve more. So understanding where those feelings are coming from, and then talking with others, and for example, being part of events like this, having your network of support is really important and will lead you to the way. So whenever you're facing challenges, reach out people in your network, but don't ever let these things come in your way and stop you from moving towards your goal.
And talking about network of support, if any of you would like to reach out to the speakers or myself, you see in the bio widget, you will see an email link that goes directly to my inbox. So feel free to send any follow-up questions or any other thoughts that you have. Lilla. And I know that in data engineering, women are even fewer than the meager percentage we have of women in STEM in general. So how has your experience been?
Well, this is the experience I had throughout my career, even when I was at my education, that women were like just a few. And to be fair, throughout my career, I never worked with another data engineer, a women data engineer. So it was always me or no one else. And well, for a long time, I thought that it does not bother me. But last year, I actually met another data engineer who was a lady. And all of a sudden, I got so happy and surprised, and I had so much feelings. Oh, you exist. it was really striking for me that actually that's something which is missing, and it would be so great to see other examples. I think what I gain strength from is my friends who are like my women friends who are also very successful in their careers. None of them are data engineers, unfortunately, but seeing that it's not, you know, impossible for others, and you don't have to be a unicorn, that is actually great. But I guess like what was that we mentioned? Okay, never mind.
Thank you. I know I was thrilled when I found a data engineer to join our panel, because I looked and looked. It was very difficult to find that job title that a woman holds. So that's great that you shared it. Samia, you had any final thoughts?
Yeah, so I wanted to, since we're talking about careers and this question from some women listening, so I just want to add that there is one more reason that contributes to seeing less women around is, as women, often we hold ourselves back from applying to the job unless we, like if the requirements are 10, unless we are fully satisfied that we check mark all the boxes, we don't apply. So that's not the case. They are there as a guideline. It doesn't mean that you need to hit like 130% before you can consider applying for that job. So please don't make that mistake and go for it. So that was like the last room I wanted to leave on entire career. So have faith in yourself.
Very cool. Well, we have gone a few minutes over time, but I think the discussion was totally worth it. Thank you, everyone who joined us live. And as I said, I'm sure you have other questions. Feel free to send them my way. I'll make sure that the panelists answer that. Please do fill out the feedback form. It will help us take this series forward in a more useful way. Lilla, Liza, Samia, thank you so much for being here with us and sharing all those wonderful, wonderful stories and perspectives with us. Truly appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you
so much.
Okay, bye.